My name is David Dishman. I'm a reporter with the Oklahoman. I cover medical marijuana, and today I helped moderate a panel on medical marijuana at St. Luke's Church in Oklahoma City. The event was hosted by Leadership Oklahoma City, and we discussed the business impact, health regulations, and the overall state of the industry in Oklahoma. Where are we at now? What is the industry looking like, the market within medical marijuana? Where are things going at this moment now that we're a little over a year into it?
Yeah, so 2020 is going to be the year of the great bloodletting in the state. So you're about to watch the pendulum swing back the other way. And what's going to hurt businesses here, but by the way, I'm supportive of how our policymakers put this into place. I'm a free market capitalist. Let's let people put their risk capital in play and their talent in play, and let the best stand. That's best for the consumer. It's best for the market. So it's a good approach. It's not negative. But there's certainly a saturation of retail outlets. There's a saturation of cultivators. We'll find market equilibrium. But the two things that are interesting from an economic perspective is price consolidation is already occurring, and also taxation is unique. There's no regular business expense deductions for the cannabis industry. So my salary is not deductible for a company, as an example. That's extraordinarily challenging. Rent, not deductible. Most CapEx, so we can't deduct it. So we're paying a 42% effective tax rates off the gross in most cases. That will bankrupt most companies that you see on the street corner. So I would guess that you're going to see 60 to 70% of those retail stores closed by October. And why October? Because that's when that tax bill's due.
Business professionals in here, many who are now dealing with, okay, what do I do with employees who are medical marijuana patients? And what if I want to allow it? What if I don't want to allow it in my workplace? What if I'm a patient and my employer is saying I don't want that, or vice versa? Can you explain a little bit about what you're seeing and how you're working through that from a legal standpoint?
Well, the first thing the way that we work through it is we consult your lawyer, because I can't answer all those questions just sitting here on the stage, because it's a process and it depends on your industry and the type of employee you have and whether your employee has a medical marijuana license. So really step one is, what industry are you in? If you are in an industry that is all white collar individuals who don't have anything what's called safety sensitive as defined by the state legislature, and you don't have any employees that are regulated by the Department of Transportation, then employees with a medical marijuana license, they are permitted under normal circumstances to partake in and use according to their medical marijuana license. And you're going to want to have a policy in place that talks about, you want to have two policies. Policy number one is we don't allow you to use drugs, possess drugs, or partake during your working hours or on our premises. And then policy two is a question that I have encountered with countless employers is, do we continue to test for marijuana? If you are in an industry that has something that safety is a concern, if you have, or if you're regulated by the Department of Transportation and you have to test for marijuana, a lot of employers are taking off marijuana off the list of what they're having their employees tested for, because it's not worth it for them to have to go through the process of, finding out a person testing positive, and then finding out they have a medical marijuana license. Then you can't do anything after that if they're not a safety sensitive job, because that would violate the anti-discrimination provisions that were passed.
One theme that kind of got brought up several times from these folks is a continued, I don't know if it's a confusion or lack of information on how the process works from someone who decides, hey, I think I might like to get my medical marijuana card. I think I'd like to purchase some medical marijuana. What does that look like for a person who goes into a dispensary and purchases? What is the follow-up from a physician standpoint? What are they telling a patient? Hey, you need to try this or do this. If there is any guidance on that? And how does that work from a physician to a patient to a dispensary perspective?
Well, let me start with what we run 2 research clinics at OMRF, so we're not in the medical care business in general, but we have 2, and they're both turned to be kind of on point. One is multiple sclerosis clinic, and that one of the areas that is, I think, most widely accepted of beneficial use of medical marijuana is in spasticity or muscle spasms in MS patients. So, and then secondly, we run a clinic in severe forms of arthritis where we're looking at causes and so forth. Again, people with chronic pain and disability, again, another area that's thought to be relevant. So we decided not to establish a policy. We have none. And individual physicians sort that out with their patients. So we think it's a physician-patient issue for them to deal with. And one point I would make is that you actually don't write a prescription. You make a recommendation, and then the patient can get that their card or certificate they would take to the dispensary. So the physician didn't prescribe that, and I'd say that most physicians, certainly I don't think any of ours would consider themselves expert in what to use here. In fact, we had a little discussion earlier about even what delivery method you should use. And particularly things like edibles are really problematic, knowing what the dose is, because we don't know what dose should be used for muscle spasms or chronic pain from arthritis. And in many cases, the patient is going to have to titrate that themselves. Now, we do that with other medications as well, pain medications, for example. So it's not unusual, but it is a little bit problematic in the case of medical marijuana about how do we titrate.
My question is, what enters the discussion between, from your perceptions, between the doctor and the patient, and between the patient or user and the dispensary regarding the method of administration?
The user also has the option of vaping rather than smoking the plant material itself. And I think there's a reasonable consensus in the medical community that if a patient is going to choose one or the other, that most medical professionals would prefer that they vape simply because there are fewer chemicals involved. With pyrolysis, the burning of plant material for cigarette smoking, marijuana smoking, we're talking about thousands of compounds that are generated, and we know that they are physically harmful. So vaping is a possibility. It goes to the epidemic, if you will, of lung injury due to vaping cannabis products. Turns out that CDC, great job of epidemiology in looking at the vape products that were used to cause these lung injuries here recently in the last 6 months or so, where people have died. And it turns out it was underground manufacture of the vape juice, the vape liquid cartridges. The manufacturers could go to China, order up 1,000 empty cartridges, as well as the packaging, bootleg packaging that mimicked commercially available products, and they were cutting it with vitamin E acetate, which is what ultimately was causing the lung injury in people. So I agree 100% with the vaping or smoking is a way for a person to titrate it very rapidly. There is some risk with edibles in that onset of the person actually feeling it might be 2 or 3 hours. If they don't feel it after 15 minutes, 20 minutes, they may take another dose, another dose, another dose, and they're going to feel like they get run over by a train in about 2 or 3 hours.